All right, my first question is always the easiest. I just ask you to spell your first and last name so I get that right, and then give me your title with targeting as well.
Okay. That's Trevor, Trevor, Elkins, Elkins, and my title with targeting is president.
I want to start broad if we can. Would you walk me through sort of how did targeting come to be?
So if you know anything about my history, what you'll know is that there was a transitionary period where I wasn't in public office, and I had to look to use my skill set and my experience to basically take care of my family. I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit, so what I decided to do is use some of the experience that I had gained and learned in my prior term as mayor to assist other municipalities with their speeding problem. And that's really the genesis and the kernel of the idea for starting the business.
I know that the efficacy or sort of the implementation of the ticketing process in Newburgh Heights has gone back and forth over the years, but I'm curious, as someone who's held public office and been a resident, how do you evaluate the safety component of it all these years later? Because I know you have a little bit of a sample size now.
We do, and we've been able to demonstrate, and we have demonstrated over the years that there is a reduction in speeding in Newburgh Heights. I off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you what that number is, but I want to say it's anywhere in the 20 to 25% reduction in speeds. And what's important for people to understand is even though we're attempting to get people to do the speed limit, simply slowing people down in the event there is an accident or there is a collision, just the slower speed alone improves outcomes and safety.
I know in some of the pitches that I've seen with you in local city council chambers, you've discussed the aspect of not only safety, but resident awareness, that people know about these and hopefully that deters speeding. At the same time, people aren't usually pumped to receive a speeding ticket. What are the responses like from the community?
Yeah, well, I'd ask you, is anybody ever pumped to receive any kind of ticket, whether it's speeding otherwise? The answer, of course, is no. One of the important things is that we engage in, and I think that I do that's a little different than other vendors engage in, is a public information education process. That is ads in the local neighborhood news, whatever paper that particular community uses, a postcard mailing to every resident in that neighborhood, signage, public communication. Some communities request and have public forums. So it's my job to try and share with the residents overall what they're looking at and the value of the program in general.
And in some of those pitches, I know you've mentioned specifics about where that revenue goes, how it has helped bolster law enforcement, first responders. Is that something that you actively hear about from residents, the way that revenue goes to work for them?
So in generally, no, except through their elected representatives.
Sure.
Typically, because of my experience here in Newburgh Heights and what we have done with the funding, I'm able to share that more broadly in the general public when I'm out with the various communities. Some communities elect to put a portion of that funding into reserve funds where it can only be spent, for example, for police or fire protection. Some put it in road funds. It just really depends on the nature of the particular governing body and what their public is telling them. Now, I have the benefit of having been a finance director for several communities before, so I am able to share with them, this is what your legislation should look like if you want to sequester some of those resources to particular functions and goals that just standard regular traffic camera companies don't have. So I provide that value-added service.
So you returned to public office.
Yeah.
What's compelled you to continue to expand the targeting business as you've also returned to public service?
So because there's a continued interest in the service I provide, really is more than anything. I am looking at the end of my career in public office at some point in the future. At age 53, I'm not going to be in this position forever. And any 4 years, I could lose an election, at which point I have to be in a spot to take care of my family. And my prior career mistake and error that I made really illuminated that and shared, hey, you need to make sure that if something goes wrong, your children and wife are taken care of. So that's really kind of the genesis for this continued effort.
How would you describe the duties that targeting handles for the municipalities, villages, townships that you represent or that you consult with?
I'm not quite sure I understand the question. Can you kind of rephrase
Sure.
that, I guess?
I know consulting obviously is the primary responsibility, helping to implement these systems, set them up, make sure they're running properly. I've just heard different information across city council meetings. You've talked about lobbying in Columbus. You talked about, again, the sort of setup process. You've talked about media responsibilities as well. Could you just sort of, I guess, paint the picture when a municipality or a village or township signs a contract with targeting, what comes with that package?
Yeah, that's a great question. The number one and most important aspect of it is I engage the processor. What most people don't understand, media included, about the way that this system typically works, and this was one of the reasons I wanted to get into this space, having had the experience previously in my own community, is the processors are kind of disconnected from the community and the neighborhood and the elected officials. So they come in, they set up the cameras, and then they run. But there's no local understanding or management of all of the rest of the stuff that goes with it, the legal aspect, how it works with folks in Columbus, for example, revenue aspect, how you might use these resources, implementation by the police departments. So I bring real-world practical experience to the table that is designed and more focused on the municipality, as opposed to making sure the camera company gets what they want, which obviously is to issue citations. So I bring the entire package together in a way that manages it for the municipality. And for the most part, in most municipalities, they don't have the expertise to do themselves.
So what does that entail over a period of time, 6 months or a year, however long it would take for you to sort of exercise all the responsibilities that comes along with that? What does that look like?
So it's ongoing. So it does kind of ebb and flow. It involves making sure the legislation that exists is state compliant, legal. I work directly with the law firms that are the law directors that manage the legal side of it. There's another layer now with the way the current state law is, and that is coordinating and working with the municipal courts. So we have to make sure things integrate properly with the court and the law director and the prosecutors. We have to make sure, and I do the lion's share of this, and as it relates to guidance of the legal teams for each municipality. We make sure that we outline and explain to our communities what their responsibilities are with the resources and reporting, and making sure they remain compliant to the auditors, and are able to demonstrate to the auditors, this ticket was issued, this ticket was paid, and here is the evidence when it comes to audit time. I make sure I manage the public relations process. So when there's questions and concerns, I meet with the media on behalf of my clients because I have the expertise. That's part of what they hired me for. So that's an angle. I meet with the public, communicate with the public as they need me to. Man, the list goes on, but I think that kind of covers the gist of what you're asking.
Yeah, and I want to understand the process through its entirety. So I know, again, implementation is so much of the immediacy. When a municipality signs a contract, setting up the system, I'm sure, is an enormous amount of work. How much of that continues? Like, you just outlined a host of responsibilities. I'm not familiar with how all of them operate.
Yeah.
How much of that continues through that initial setup process?
So a fair amount. What becomes my responsibility after the initial setup, which most people think is you flip the switch and it's on and then it kind of runs itself. That's not true at all. So there's consistent work with the individual police departments. The equipment itself, for the cameras example, those are owned by myself. So what I then have to do is I have to make sure, hey, are these things operating the way they're supposed to? Hey, are these things calibrated the way they're supposed to be? I make sure that the municipality is following the state law with regard to getting cameras recalibrated on an annual basis like they're supposed to. So it is ongoing. Is it as intense as it is the first 6 to 8 months, first year even? No, it's not as intense, but it is ongoing, and it remains my job to ensure the municipality is functioning properly so that there's no backlash on them as it relates to any legal action.
What are the challenges? You're a public official. You have a busy job. What are the challenges of juggling your responsibilities as mayor while also running this growing business that serves a host of municipalities?
So, I've been asked that question before, and I appreciate it because it allows me to explain to folks that since I was 30, I guess the term is workaholic. I've always had multiple enterprises. I've been very, very fortunate to serve my community, and my community knows that I'm there 24/7 for them. So I'm able to prioritize my time. There'll be times I'll be working Sunday night at 9 o'clock at night, making sure that emails and communications for Newburgh Heights are met. And there'll be times at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm speaking to and working with the law director for the village of Wyndham, which is a client of mine, to make sure that their needs are met. So it's really about learning balance, and that's what I've done. I know because I've worked multiple careers in multiple positions for many years, both multiple public service positions, as well as this private enterprise and other private enterprises and public service. I've developed a really good working balance to ensure my responsibilities are met to my home community.
What would you say to a community member that's concerned about a public official taking information that they obtained as a public official and privatizing that information while they're in public office? Is there any concern there?
Yeah, so let's be very clear. I've never taken information.
I don't mean like sensitive information. I mean information that you learned as the mayor of Newburgh.
Yeah, no, I don't. I think that's a common thread throughout public service. For example, there are many local elected officials, let's say law directors, for example, that work for multiple communities. They take experience in cases that they've had in one community and apply it and use it in other communities. I don't think that's inappropriate or uncommon at all. I'm not going to apologize for having learned about this industry and this business as part of my official capacity, but there's certainly no ethical violation or inappropriateness to that osmosis, if you will.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think the percentage jumps out to a lot of people that targeting is taking home 40% of the speeding ticket revenue.
Man, I wish that were true. I wish it was.
And I don't mean taking home as in you taking home, but targeting receives 40% of ticket revenue.
Yeah.
I think especially years after the system is implemented, that seems like a really large number. What would you say to someone that sees these dollar amounts and say, hey, they set up this system years ago, it's running itself, and they're still taking home hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxpayer speeding tickets?
Yeah, I would say it's an uninformed position because most people don't know how much it costs or the amount of time or investment in getting these programs ramped up and off the ground. I just think it's kind of an uninformed position. It's also kind of industry standard. The number didn't come out of, I didn't pull the number out of the sky. I can tell you that there are some of my competitors that try and do a bigger number than that. I am trying to do what's a good balance for the municipality, but still make sure that the program operates the way it needs to. I have the equipment I need to run the program, things like that. Those are not, that stuff is not paid for by the municipality. That's paid for out of that 40%.
Can you walk us through any of the expenses where that, I genuinely don't know. What are the challenges and costs of running the consulting business as the years go on?
Well, they always remain legal. We always have a legal expense. We have insurance. We have fees that we have to pay for our processing. That never changes. The vendors that I work with to do the actual processing, and their software and hardware and technology. That never changes. There are costs, as I mentioned, from a legal perspective. I'm drawing a blank now, but they don't change dramatically. Sure, there's the initial expenditure after I buy some of the hardware and equipment. Some of those expenses go down, but they're really amortized over the years of the program and the life of what we do.
Would it be fair to say cost of doing business is pretty consistent once the programs are up? Like, you're describing a spike in costs as you set up, but people aren't seeing the fact that in year 3, it's just as expensive for you to consult and run your business as it was in year 1. That's what I want to understand.
Yeah, no, so there is a slight decline. I'm not going to suggest that year 1 is the same cost as year 3, but it's not so much that the dollar amounts are not valid. It's for the vendor, for the camera company, myself, the return really is on the back end of most contracts, and the renewal, as opposed to the front end.
In a couple of the city council pitches that I saw you engaged in, you mentioned a lobbyist in Columbus, and you talked about the political challenges. Tickets like these certainly have been challenged several times over the years, and they're still around. Can you described having a lobbyist in Columbus, but in the contracts that I obtained, I couldn't find any direct mention of a lobbyist. Okay, so you're the lobbyist.
I do the lobbying, yes.
Okay,
yeah.
So I know specifically when you spoke with Newton Falls, I guess it was earlier this year, you mentioned a lobbyist in Columbus. That's you doing that.
That's
work.
me, yeah.
What entails?
Now I will add to that. Let me add to that. I speak with a lot of lobbyists in Columbus. There are numerous lobbyists in Columbus that work on behalf and with. So I do try to gather information from other folks in Columbus, who I will allow to remain nameless.
Sure.
But they're friends of mine and people I know that have been involved in this effort around photo enforcement over the years. So I will communicate with them from time to time, in addition to work I do with individual legislators.
Is that you being in Columbus often, or I haven't worked in lobbying? How does that work, and how does that sort of keep you at the forefront of whatever information or trends are going on in the industry? So
the internet's an amazing thing, and you can get an amazing amount of information from the internet. Various sites monitor Columbus's activity, and the phone works wonders. So I personally don't need to be I am in Columbus several times a year, but I don't personally need to be there all the time to do the work I do on behalf of my clients. Lobbying is a very, very small percentage of what I need to do to make sure my clients' systems are protected and operating legally. Obviously, we have no problem with regulation. We'd like to see smarter regulation than exists even today.
So when I first started looking around and trying to obtain records and understand sort of the scope of your business and who you did business with and what those dollar amounts looked like, you reached out to me before I heard back from the records offices in which I requested the records. I was shocked at that. And I've seen in city council meetings, part of your pitch is that you handle media responsibilities, but that's also not in any of the contracts that I could obtain. Can you just describe sort of how that media responsibility works?
That's exactly how it works. Is what I advise my clients is that if they have questions, they're asked by the media, or they need information for the media, because I am the expert. I am their expert.
Sure.
To reach out to me and let me know. And that's exactly what happened in your case. Is that I was informed that, in fact, I think I was informed by somebody that wasn't even my client yet that you were talking to, which I found peculiar, that when I reached out to you. So it's really kind of my function, in addition to, because I want what we do to be represented accurately. And oftentimes, some of the elected officials that are dealing with this, and particularly those ramping up and starting new programs, don't have the entire context to fairly accurately represent to the public through the media what it is their community is attempting to do.
I totally understand. You've got the expertise for how your business operates and the logistics behind that. Why isn't that media responsibility in any of those contracts?
I don't know that there's a particular reason. I don't know that there is a particular reason for that. There's no. I certainly could put it in there. I have no problem
Sure.
with it. Yeah, no, there's no hard fast reason for
Yeah, like a deliberate decision.
Yeah, not at all.
So part of my challenge, because I'm not a speeding ticket expert, I don't I don't have expertise in these systems or formal knowledge, but I do want to speak with the public officials who are implementing these systems. I want to know how the implementation process has worked. I want to know if safety has improved. I want to know how they evaluate the cost to their taxpayer. And none of these mayors want to talk with me. One of the mayors told me explicitly that you handle the media responsibility about targeting's operations, which I totally understand. But I guess I would ask, would you approve or would you advise your clients to speak with the media about the specifics to their constituents?
No, I wouldn't. And to be very blunt, why is the media often misrepresents what the programs are based around, what they do, and why they exist. So I would not advise my clients to speak with the media, having gone through this experience many times myself in my official capacity and watched the media manipulate and twist what is actually going on into something is not.
So do you think that these mayors have any responsibility to their constituents to explain how the program's working, if safety has improved, how they're spending taxpayer dollars?
So 100% I think they have the responsibility to do that. They have done that. They do it at their council meetings. They did it by passing legislation acknowledging, hey, we have a speeding problem here. We have to do something about it. This is the technology we're going to use to do something about it. And we have this expert that's got the experience to answer these questions for us. It's no different than, say, some of the mayors in the larger communities who have spokespeople. The mayor of Cleveland oftentimes will have various individuals speak on behalf of certain topics on his behalf. It's the equivalent of that.
Sure.
And that's what's going on.
Yeah.
There's nothing being hidden. There's nothing nefarious. They've met the mayors and elected officials of these communities have met their responsibility in the council meetings through the readings of the ordinances, the adoption, and the opportunity to answer questions right then and there when they're passing this stuff.
Sure. And like I said, I mean, the most important thing to me is giving you a platform to answer these questions.
Thank you.
I appreciate you beating that head on. And I'm still sorting through a lot of these numbers, but I did hear from a lot of residents, both in your community and in some of these municipalities that are implementing these systems. And so it's important to me genuinely to give you the platform to answer questions that I'm getting. And you've addressed that head on, but I want to just offer one more time. What would you say to someone who sees this? Because I don't want to misrepresent anything, but I want to hear it directly from you. What would you say to someone who just sees the dollar amounts or who might not have an expert understanding of the whole process and sees, well, this is a public official who's running a private business, and that private business is taking in hundreds of thousands of dollars every year based off speeding tickets from taxpayers. I can't understand why the optics would alarm or surprise some people, and I know that you've thought through this. I know this is a deliberate thing, so I want to understand sort of from your perspective how you see it.
Yeah, so number one, let's be very clear. I do not make a dime until somebody breaks the law. So we're not taxing people. This is not a tax.
Yeah.
These are not quote unquote taxpayer dollars. It really amounts and is in no way different than, for example, when you see a community, let's say Brecksville, has posted a police officer on Interstate 77, and you go ripping down 77 at about 90 miles an hour, and that police officer pulls you over. You end up in Brecksville's mayor's court, and you pay a fine. This is the same thing. This isn't that community or targeting solutions reaching into a taxpayer's pocket and saying, yeah, you got to give us some money. That's not what's happening here at all. These are people that have consciously made a decision to break a law, and just like fingerprints and DNA, we have begun to use new technology that allows us to be better at enforcing safety regulations than existed before. That's what I would tell people. If you don't want to pay a ticket, slow down. And by the way, let me be very clear, very lenient. I recommend to every one of my clients that threshold be 10 miles an hour. So if your speed limit is 25, you don't get a ticket till you're doing 35. That's a enormous grace period, space, about 40%. That also is a huge, if you were to have a collision at that difference in speed, the damage is enormously different.
Sure.
So that's what I would tell people. This isn't about taxing people. This is about enforcement of a code, a very basic code where people should be more self-aware and more concerned about their fellow citizen on the road next to them than they are about paying a fine for new technology.
And I totally understand the logic behind the systems and the way that it could improve safety. I think, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like you're asking people to sort of separate Mayor Elkins and Trevor Elkins, president of Targeting Solutions, that although the optics of an elected official profiting off of speeding tickets might be confusing, it's sort of two separate operations.
Oh, absolutely is. First of all, my experience as mayor and my role as mayor has zero impact and zero to do. They are really sequestered. I haven't even seen Newburgh Heights' contract with their speeding. I haven't seen it. It's run by our council and by our mayor, or not mayor, police chief. Excuse me. So I'm sequestered from that for legal reasons. What I do as president of Targeting Solutions, even though I am also the mayor of Newburgh Heights, is really no different than what numerous mayors do that have multiple avenues of employment. Many mayors are, also lawyers. Some of them have jobs as finance directors. Some of them have, the hats are just different. Now, if you want to suggest that the taxpayers in Newburgh Heights bump my salary up a little, I'm all for it. I'm kidding, of course.
Yeah.
I love my community. But the reality is as I said when we first started this conversation, I'm not going to be the mayor forever. I'm still I think I'm still a relatively young man, and I want to be able to make sure that I pay for my daughter's colleges and afford, we have a good retirement. So I have to balance all of that. In my capacity, as long as my capacity running Targeting Solutions doesn't conflict and interfere with my ability to deliver in the community I love, and has been home for me for 28 years now, there is no conflict. And I'm very, very careful to make sure that doesn't happen.
I saw in one council meeting specifically, I can't remember where it was, and I only have a couple more, and I
you're
really
fine.
appreciate your time.
I do this for an hour, too.
Yeah.
I don't care.
It was either a law director or a council member that called the idea of the system a cash grab, and you pushed back on that and you insisted that this is about safety. I just want to sort of tee it up one last time, the opportunity to explain where your values really lie here, that this is genuinely about safety and deterrence.
Yeah, so the beauty of this is it's safety on a level that most people don't understand or don't first contemplate. Yes, there is a penalty that is a deterrent, just like there is in every other kind of traffic violation. There's a fine attached to it. You run that stop sign, and you get caught by an officer, you get a penalty. There's a deterrent attached to that, so that you don't run that stop sign again. Does that generate revenue? Of course it does, but that's the deterrent. The little bit of pain that's caused by that fine says, oh, I don't want to do that again. With that being said, it goes so much deeper than that. Over the years, what happens is the people that have decided that they're gonna slow down and follow the traffic laws, they no longer have to pay that deterrent because they're following the traffic laws. However, those that choose to continue to violate the law or simply ignore it, that have to pay that fine, those resources that get plowed back into things like hiring police officers, hiring firemen, repaving roads, which most people don't realize is a safety thing. Making sure that communities, their lighting systems work. So safety goes far deeper than just stopping somebody from speeding. And that's what the revenue and these resources for these municipalities do for people that choose to continue to ignore the law so blatantly, and since COVID, exponentially worse than it ever was.
I'm curious how you see the future of this type of enforcement. Do you anticipate, is there a chance that every municipality or township or village is engaged in practices like that? Are you seeing increased involvement or numbers? What do you think this looks like 5 years, 10 years down the road?
I do think it's going to expand because it is effective. And we can't hire enough police officers fast enough to really deter this particular issue of speeding, for example. We also, at least in my community, and I know in most communities, would rather our police officers be in the neighborhood dealing with problem homes, issues, let's say there's a fist fight or something. I'm just pulling an idea out of my head. That's what they're dealing with, making sure cars aren't getting stolen. That's what most people really want their police officers doing. This technology affords police officers the opportunity to do that. In the same way that, I know one of the complaints that comes in about traffic cameras is, oh, I didn't get my ticket for 2 weeks later. Okay. But the evidence is there. It's hard, it's video, it's hard evidence. We see you broke the law. For some reason, there's this notion that law, if you break that particular law, the only way you should have any penalty for that is if you're caught in the moment. That's one of the only laws in our society we feel that way about. If you, and I know this is an extreme comparison, but if you murder somebody, we're okay with arresting you 30 years later.
Sure. Yeah.
As our technology improves. Now, don't get me wrong. I know the two are not the same.
Sure. Yeah.
But what's happened is we've now developed a technology that can match fingerprints, DNA, cellular configuration, etc. That's what's going on here. And that's, I think, where a lot of the public frustration about traffic cameras is it's a law that people for the longest time were allowed to ignore. And they did ignore. And now they can't. And that's where the frustration comes in.
That's all from me. I don't have any other questions. Is there anything else that we wanted to get to? I know it's nuanced. I know it's layered. Anything that I didn't ask about that you wanted to make sure that we covered?
I think you did a great job, and I appreciate you taking the time to be open and sit down and ask me questions face to face.
Yeah.
What I would say and what I would ask the general public is, please slow down. And then this isn't an issue for you. And that's really about it.
That's simple.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Yep.
All right, team. Thank you guys for letting us
appreciate it.
sit in here.
It's just starting to get warmer and comfortable. Well, go back out my room.
That's coming to an end. All
Oh.
right, I can't see here.
Want to get your peep?
I think I got it. Just don't let me. Thank you, sir. Here's your mic.